Good afternoon, New Jersey and all other states that are attending this beautiful Zoom conference of the 2022 MLK Commemorative Commission. Welcome. I am so excited to be a part of this year. There was so much that happened. There was so much material that we could have pulled in, or we did pull in for this commemorative with our students that are participating in the competition writing. We are going to be stunned by the information today. I am so happy to be a part of the special guests appearing today, Mrs. Krump, one of our former presidents. She's going to be wonderful. We've got great speakers. We want to promote the feeling of unity, that we're all one and we're all in this together. And everyone has a responsibility to love your neighbor, to uplift one another, and to make the world a better and safer place to be.
Good afternoon. My name is Major Danielle Nakamura. I am the Branch Chief of Retirement Services for the 99th Readiness Division of the United States Army Reserves. It is with great pleasure that I will lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to speak with you today in commemoration of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I would especially like to thank the New Jersey Department of State for offering me this opportunity to share my thoughts and experiences as they relate to this day. On the third Monday of every January, we commemorate Dr. King's service and sacrifice to our nation. His leadership was fundamental to the civil rights movement's success in ending the legal segregation of African Americans in the South and other parts of the United States. The demands made by Dr. King and his fellow activists were simple: equality for all in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, where our founding fathers wrote that all men are created equal. Dr. King advocated for African Americans and, in truth, for all Americans. By bringing this country closer to the mandate set forth in 1776 that all citizens are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today we stand in the shadow of great Americans such as Dr. King, and we continue to strive for the equality that was promised when this nation was founded. Dr. King devoted his life to advocating equality, social justice, and opportunity for all. He also believed in the power of individual service in strengthening communities and achieving common goals, what Dr. King called the beloved community. This was where people from all walks of life would work together to provide solutions to our most pressing problems. There is still much work to be done, much progress to be made in achieving Dr. King's utopian vision. But if we stand united, there is nothing that we cannot do, nothing that we cannot accomplish. As Dr. King himself said, let us rise up with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move on in these powerful days. These days of challenge to make America what it ought to be. In the Army, we live by Army values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Dr. King lived by these same values. And by remembering his life and work every January, it gives our soldiers the opportunity to celebrate his contributions to our nation. We also reflect on his strength of commitment to service and to each other. The same type of commitment we all share as brothers and sisters in arms. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity to honor this man, one of the greatest American heroes. And as he once noted, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed.
Good afternoon. My name is George Guy, and I am the proud chair of the New Jersey Martin Luther King Commission, the first commission in the United States of America, started way back in the early 1980s. We would like to welcome you today. First of all, we'd like to thank Commissioner Lynn Galashaw for the great welcome and intro to the work that we're going to be doing. We'd like to thank Major Danielle Nakamura for the Pledge of Allegiance and sharing some of her thoughts about Dr. King. We would also like to thank our team. To put on a virtual event of this magnitude takes an incredible team. So at the Department of State, we'd like to first thank Rowena Madden for the work that she's been doing, and then our colleagues, Vincent Finellis and Lisa Flife, for the work that they've been doing. And of course, we couldn't do this without the folks that are behind the scenes, Tanae Nicole with Nakia McLean and Angelique Lennon and many others who are helping us with this work. As we continue with the program, we want to just introduce two pre-recorded, or one pre-recorded segment and then one live segment, or well, actually, two pre-recorded segments. First, we're going to hear from the Honorable Tahisha Way, who is the Department of State's Secretary of State, has been supporting the New Jersey Martin Luther King Commission and all of our other commissions in this great state of New Jersey for an incredible amount of time. And she's going to talk about Dr. King and the fierce urgency of now. And then directly following her, we're going to have a musical tribute by Irene Olson, Memory of Calvary Baptist Church. And she is going to talk about, or she's going to sing about, Lift Every Voice and Sing. So without further ado, let's hear from the Honorable Secretary of State, Tahisha Way.
Good afternoon, New Jersey's Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Commission, and to all our friends who have joined today. A huge thank you to the Commission for all you do, and a special shout out to your dedicated Chairman, George Guy Jr., and Director Rowena Madden, who oversees the Commission. I also extend my deep appreciation to Assemblywoman Verlena Reynolds Jackson for her tremendous support. The Assemblywoman is serving on today's panel discussion of health equity, and you will learn about the important initiatives that she is sponsoring in the New Jersey legislature to address this issue. Yes. Each year, we are able to reflect on the life and legacy of Dr. King and apply his message to our own lives and times. This year, that message has never been clearer or more pressing. The fierce urgency of now. So much of Dr. King's work was devoted to bringing equity and compassion to all of the citizens of our nation and world. And today, we find ourselves challenged by trends, social media, and voices that question the themes of equity and empathy that we are striving to uphold. What can we do to meet those challenges? Let us think back to those images of the March on Washington, the march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the Freedom Rides, and the Children's Crusade in Birmingham, Alabama. In these situations, Dr. King was advised to go slow by some, but he listened to his inner drum major for justice voice and moved forward. As he said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Now more than ever, we should elevate Dr. King's words and deeds. His daughter, Dr. Bernice King, has provided her thoughts about the importance of this year's commemoratives. She called upon all of us to use our various platforms to do what her father would do if voting rights are still hanging in the balance. My father would speak and act in a way to ensure that this nation lives up to its promise of democracy. As New Jersey's chief elections officer, I am so proud that New Jersey is expanding access to voting and educating people of all ages about the importance of our exercise of this essential part of our democracy. Finally, I also want to join with you in honoring the life's work of the Honorable Mildred C Krump, who served so well as co-chair of this commission. I understand she will be joining us today via our virtual portal. She was the first Black woman to win a citywide election in Newark and the first woman to serve as Newark City Council president. She started out as a teacher of the blind and visually impaired. Her great dedication, amazing people skills, and her devotion to so many aspects of our lives, including the African diaspora in New Jersey and our nation, motivated her to achieve unprecedented positions and the highest respect. I know she would join me in saying that today and every day we must accept the mantle Dr. King and his beloved Coretta Scott King passed on. We must be the change that we are seeking. Adults, elders, and young people must keep moving forward with the fierce urgency of now. Thank you and enjoy the commemorative.
Lift every voice and sing, gentler than heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with the steady to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Incredible. First of all, we want to thank Secretary of State Wei for inspirational words with regards to the fierce urgency of now, words that we can take to heart and put feet and legs to after our virtual commemorative. We want to thank Irene Olson for wonderful effervescence of song and ministry, which reflects a huge part of who Dr. King was and still remains to us, even in the present day. As we move forward within this virtual commemorative, we are extremely excited to have with us Reverend Sharia K. Jackson. And Reverend Jackson serves as a global messenger, coach, and communications consultant on 5 continents. She is a licensed minister and serves as the Wheat Street Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, where Dr. Martin Luther King hosted signings for his books. She is also organizing a new women's organization, Honey Ministry, opening this March 2022. Sharia is the founder of Shine Army, serving leaders to be seen, heard, and legendary. She is the best-selling author of Boss Bride, the powerful woman's playbook for love and success, available in libraries across the globe, including Australia and New Zealand. Sharia has been featured by Good Morning America and is a contributor to the New York Times. Her clients range from Fortune 500 companies to community organizations, including Uber Chase and Dress for Success. Sharia previously served as Essence senior editor, where she worked for a decade empowering millions of women around the world. Reverend Jackson, we are incredibly excited to have you with us to bring acts of remembrance for Dr. Martin Luther King today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to you, and we look forward to hearing your inspirational message.
Thank you so much, Chairman. It's an honor to be here. It's an absolute honor. Good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from around the globe. What an incredible occasion. I'm just so full in this moment to be with you at this special New Jersey Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Commission presents the fierce urgency of when y'all, of right right now. And before we go any further, I think it's so important that we honor such an incredible commission, the first of its kind in our country, that New Jersey is at the head to lead such a charge to say we will not let the lessons of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. be forgotten, and have put together such an incredible community of leaders. So thank you for having me. Thank you to Commissioner Linda Galashaw, who kicked us off. Thank you to Secretary Tahisha Way for her incredible message. Thank you again to our Chairman, George Gray. And thank you to each and every one of you for showing up for an occasion such as this, because we know, as Dr. King said in his letter from the Birmingham jail, that freedom is never given, that it must be won generation by generation. And so I encourage you on this special historic weekend in such historic times that you continue to engage with the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and so many of the civil rights leaders who have gotten us so far along the way. And can we give it up again to Irene Austin for that incredible rendition of such an important song in the history of our people. And so I want to talk a little about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I want to first, let's talk about his most famous speech, because we often know, if you hear the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., there's a few words we often hear soon after. We hear about what? His dream, his most famous speech, I Have a Dream, which was delivered at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, which took place on August 28th, 1963. And can we talk about how many people from around the country, the world, got in cars, got on trains to come to fight for our freedoms? There were over 250,000 people who gathered. That is 250,000 people, all in one place, all for one reason. And so I want to talk about that. Was the largest demonstration for human rights in our history to date. But sometimes I want us to think that we don't have to wait. And what today is about, the fierce urgency of now, what this commission is about, is to remind each of us, no matter your age, no matter what stage, you can make a difference. And I want you to know you don't have to wait for the 250,000 people to show up to make an impact. Because sometimes our biggest impacts happen when no one is looking. Sometimes when we are feeling all alone, like you might have been feeling over this pandemic, that these are the times that you still can be in contribution. Because I want you to go back. I talked about August of 1963 at the March on Washington, but I want you to fast forward 2 months before that. Because 2 months before that March on Washington, Dr. King created what is considered the most important written document in the civil rights era. And I want you to know this document he created was not created in a classroom. It wasn't created in a pulpit. He was not on a TV or radio station. When Dr. King created what is considered the most important document in the civil rights era, he was in a jail cell. He was locked up for participating in a nonviolent demonstration to fight the incredible oppression Black bodies were facing in Birmingham, Alabama. And so I want you to think about in this moment his letter from a Birmingham jail, a letter that he wrote because he had to respond, because there was 8 white religious leaders in the South who had written a letter in response to Dr. King's civil rights movement. And not just his movement. We know there are millions of people who contributed. And so there was a letter written by 8 white ministers at the time who was saying, not now, right? And sometimes when you stand tall in what we are talking about with this commission in the fierce urgency of now, there'll be people who tell you not now. And so that's what was happening. Dr. King is in jail, him and many others who have decided to risk their lives to stand up for the oppression. And there were white religious people, church people who were saying, not now. And so I want you to know sometimes when you do decide to stand up in the fierce urgency of now, you might face some opposition. But just like Dr. King shows up with this historic letter, you still can speak truth to power. And so in the spirit of Dr. King, I want us to be in action, because as you see what the date is about, it's called an act of remembrance. So quickly, I'm going to give you 4 actions in the spirit of Dr. King, in the spirit of using where we are, what we got to make an impact. And so in response to that letter, I want to say this, often a good letter will end with what? If you read a good letter, sometimes a good letter has 2 letters at the end. And what will it say? It will say P and often there will be a message to send you off with power. So quickly, I want to share with us, it's the year 2022. So I have a PPSS. We're going to double it up because we made it through some tough times, and we are in the year 2022. So in remembrance, in the spirit of Dr. King, I want you to remember the progress. I am so honored to be with you here today, and I'm joining you from Atlanta, Georgia. I was born and raised in the city and the state, just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was. But I want you to know, when he was born in 1929 and when I was born in 1985, there was a lot that took place in between those years. And so even though Dr. King and I both grew up in families of faith, had families that had a lot of musicians, had families that had a lot of ministers, there are a lot of ways that our lives were incredibly not the same. Our childhoods were not the same growing up in Atlanta. Because I got to grow up in Atlanta where I was able to go to public schools that were integrated. I got to go to school and sit on school buses and get on the city bus, and I could sit anywhere I wanted on that bus. I could go cast my vote without counting marbles. And so in this moment, as we talk about the fierce urgency of now, our first act of remembrance is to remember the progress. And I know we're in a time with so much challenges, it can feel like we've lost all our rights, but I want you to remember that right now, so many of us are living and walking in the dream. So in this moment, I want you to ask yourself, and we each ask ourselves, how am I living the dream? How am I a part of the progress? What are the things that were fought for that I don't even think about? And so I want you to share with us in our community right now, what are some of the ways? And as you remember the progress, I want us to go to our second P, and that is to remember the pain. As Irene sang the National Negro Anthem of Lift Every Voice and Sing, that song so beautifully and painfully witnesses the traumas that so many of our people, the violence and oppression Black bodies have endured since we came upon these shores in 1619, cannot be numbered and cannot be underestimated. And I want you to know, we cannot change their tears. We cannot change their pain. But what we can do is ensure that that pain will never be in vain. And one of the ways we ensure that that pain is never in vain is we each have to ask ourselves, how will I fight? How will I fight? And I want you to know a secret. All you got to do is use what you already got to fight. And so we see it. I'm looking at this beautiful, can we shout out this incredible artwork? You see this gorgeous picture of artwork of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the bottom corner. I want to shout out a Black-owned business, Artfully Made Designs, with his founder, Ariane Jamison. So you use your own creative ways. You want to ask yourself, how will I fight? And I want to quickly tell you, one of the things I implemented in my life, I watched a documentary on Say Her Name on Sandra Bland, who was killed mysteriously in a jail in the South in these 200 in the last few years. And in that, I was heartbroken to find that when Sandra Bland was in jail, her sisters were trying to get $500 to get her out of jail, and they just didn't have it in that moment. They just didn't have the $500. They didn't know that in a few days they'd call and their sister would be dead. And so in this moment, when I watched that documentary, I said to myself, I don't ever want to not know what it feels like to not have I don't ever want to lose the value of $500. So for me, I have a Sandra Bland shopping rule that I have in solidarity with Black women, that I don't buy clothes only twice a year for my birthday and Christmas. Do I ever buy something that costs more than $500? And I do that to make sure that I stay close to my community. And so you might think for yourself, how will I fight? What are the ways I can stay committed to moving this world forward? And so next, after we do our P and our P, we remember the progress, we remember the pain. We also want to get to our essence and remember the shoulders. I want to ask you, who got you here? Who prayed you into this year 2022? Who sent references for you to get that promotion, to get that job? Who signed off on the contract? For our young people here, we see you and we celebrate you. What are the teachers that have made an impact in your life? Who are the cousins who supported you? And we want to remember the shoulders. You see this K in my name. I don't really have to put a K, because the truth is, I really could just be Sharia Jackson. There's not a Sharia H Jackson. There's not a Sharia F Jackson. But I always put that K in my name. It's on the cover of my book because I don't ever want to get too far from K, which stands for Katie, my great-grandmother who was born in 1902 in South Carolina. And so I keep that K to keep me close to my people. I keep that K to remember both of my parents, Jerry and Cynthia, whose first job was picking cotton in the fields of South Carolina. My grandparents, who were sharecroppers. And now both of my parents have their master's degrees. So I want you to know, when you look at people with the color that we are, you are looking at people who are carrying the color of possibility. And so we want to remember the shoulders. So I want to ask you one question. Whose shoulders are you standing on? And how can you continue to honor those shoulders that we are all standing on? And so in this moment, I'm quickly just going to name a few names, but I want you to come to mind and say out of your mouth a name of a person whose shoulders you stand on. And I want to just name a few people of the civil rights movement that have held space for us. I think about Medgar Evers. I think about Fannie Lou Hamer. I think about Dorothy Height. I think about Barbara Jordan. I think about John Lewis. And say a name wherever you are. And I want you to repeat after me and say this sentence. My story doesn't start with me. One more time. My story doesn't start with me. Because one of the lies in America, and one of the lies that lives inside this American dream we're fed, is that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which is a lie. We are all a part of one another's story. So our stories don't start with us. And so lastly, as I close, I want to get to that last S. As we remember the progress, as we remember the pain, as we remember the shoulders, lastly, I want you to remember the seed. And so we talked about how our stories don't start with us, but I also want us to remember that our stories don't stop with us. We are sitting inside of the 2022 State of New Jersey MLK Commemorative Weekend Experience, because MLK's story continues, and so does yours. Your story doesn't stop with you. And so quickly, I just want you to pick up your phone. I know you might be on it, and I just want you to think of a young person in your life who was a part of a seed in your life. We want to remember those who are coming behind us, and we salute the young people who are tuning in right now. We want you to know we see you, we celebrate you, and you too are not only the future, but you'll be pulling up the future behind you. So we want to each pick up our phone and think about what's a young person in your life who you could text right now just to say, good job. I'm thinking about my young nephew, Dante, who's in South Carolina right now, who I'm probably going to text and just say, Auntie's proud of you. So I want you to think of a young people who is a part of the seed, that years from now, when you are in old age, there'll be young people coming up behind you. How can you and how can I water the seeds? And one way we do that is we stay close to this commission, which is doing an incredible job to water the future. I thank you so much for joining you. I thank you for standing with us as we take on the mantle to continue the fierce urgency of now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharia K. Jackson. Even though we know there's only one Sharia, we want to make sure that we understand what that K stands for. So let's recap what Dr. Jackson talked with us about as she moved us through an act of remembrance and having us understand the fierce urgency of now. She talked about 2 P's and 2 S's: progress, pain, the shoulders of those in which we stand upon, and the stories of which we are telling, or the young people that we can tell stories to or listen to their stories on. We just want to thank Dr. Jackson, or Reverend Jackson, for her words, for her inspiration, for her testimony, for the work that she is doing in Atlanta, here in the United States, and globally. And we are very, very excited to move into a different type of topic, but one that we think reflects who Dr. King was and who he would be advocating for at this time. We have a august round table panel virtually that is with us today. I am going to introduce them one by one, and then they are going to give a 30-second intro about themselves, and then we're going to get into some questions. But our topic today is work in progress, health disparities in the 21st century. And our quote that undergirds this topic is from Dr. King: Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health is the most shocking and inhumane. And that was in the mid 1960s when we got that quote. And here we are in 2022, still addressing health disparities. But listen, the Martin Luther King Commission has the people that have some ideas to begin to help us think more critically about this within our own contexts and can help empower us. And at the end of our panel, or if you have questions within the panel, please put them in the chat and we are going to ask our panelists about those questions because we want this to be as interactive as possible. So let's start with our introductions. First of all, these are all New Jersey Martin Luther King commissioners. So we're excited about the capacity that the commission has to talk to you today about health disparities. Our first commissioner is none other than Assemblywoman Verlena Reynolds Jackson, who is just an incredible part of who we are and what we do and has gotten the commission a apportionment that we have not had in almost 2 decades. So phenomenal, phenomenal work. It's great to have you, Assemblywoman. Why don't you take a few moments to introduce yourself?
Good, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm extremely excited to be with you today. Thank you, Chairman Guy. And I really have to thank Speaker Coughlin for placing me on this commission and to all of the commissioners here. But I also have my lovely mother with me today who's sitting in the back. So Dr. Jackson, she was all the way, she knew what was happening in my home. I was like, yes, my mom is here and we're celebrating Dr. King together as we normally do on Sundays as we come together as a family. So this is perfect for me. And, you know, a lot of other things that have come out of this commission is that we get an opportunity to hear from everyone around the state, not only to drill down on Dr. King's vision for us as a country, but how do we do that here in the state of New Jersey? And all of the commissioners bring different aspects to this. And so for me, it's just another tool that I use to make sure that the people's voice is being heard. You can look up my bio, I'm public, you can see all the things that I do, but I am really grateful to this commission for all the work that it does. And it gives me a voice to be able to talk about racism and inequality and health disparities and educational inequalities. So power to the people. Let's get ready for our panel discussion. I'm on fire.
Indeed, you are, as always, Assemblywoman. And hello to your mother. Thank you so much for being with us. And now, without further ado, we want to introduce our next panelist, Commissioner Dr. Charles Menefield. Dr. Menefield, do you have some words for us today?
I certainly do. First, I am honored to be here on this panel today. Welcome to my fellow commissioners. It's certainly an honor to serve on the MLK Commission. I'm the Dean in the School of Public Affairs and Administration here at Rutgers University, New York, and we are a school devoted to public service. So our work on this commission falls directly in harmony with all of the things that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Had in play during his life. And we continue that legacy in our efforts today. A lot of what I do is around structural determinants of health. I do a lot of work in obesity, infant mortality, particularly as how this affects minority groups and vulnerable populations. We know that COVID-19, for example, has highlighted a lot of inequities in our society, particularly as it relates to health. We're going to highlight some of those things today, as it's certainly had a disparate impact on minority communities. So welcome everyone, and I certainly hope you enjoy our presentations today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Menefield. And without further ado, last but not least, Commissioner and Dr. Quincy Bloxam, please bring some insights in your introduction as we get ready to talk about health disparities. Dr. Bloxam?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Guy. Good afternoon, everyone else. I feel immensely privileged to be able to even speak on this panel and to be a part of the historic MLK Commission that was actually conceptualized and created the year of my birth by someone who I happened to be able to sit at the foot at and learn about Dr. King, Queen Edith Savage Jennings, who actually worked with him during his work in New Jersey. Just briefly, I am a radical community organizer that happens to have degrees in business, liberal studies, and a couple degrees in social work, including a doctorate in social work. I am one of those people who are a small subset in the field of social work that is a macro practitioner, which means that I don't look at the surface area things or the things that everyone can see. I look at the structural or determinants of the things that plague some of our communities. Lastly, I'll just say that, again, being on this panel means a bunch to me, because what the viewers may not know is that Commissioner Guy happened to graduate from Willingboro High School, where I graduated from. Assemblywoman Reynolds Jackson represents the district in which I was born. And Dean Menefield is a historic figure in research and the School of Public Affairs by being the first African-American dean of that school at Rutgers. So I'm just privileged to actually be able to be here and be on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bloxham, and go Chimeras. All right. So let's get started with the first question, and that is for Assemblywoman. Assemblywoman, what is your assessment of the state of health equity in New Jersey?
Ooh. So let's start off with one. I believe that the health equity for us really means that everybody should have the opportunity to have access to health care, access to healthcare services. But what we know and what we've been known is that the disparity range is wide and far. What I can say, the good other things that came out of it is COVID-19 has ripped the veil off of the disparities. The task force that was approved by the governor, he signed off on the legislation, helps us to be able to gather that type of data. So when we start to look at the social determinants of health, whether we're talking about education or poverty or healthcare services and access to healthcare, if we're talking about language or literacy, if we're talking about, risk and outcomes, we'll be able to drill down on this information and then really start to make some changes. The other thing I want to think about is access to healthy fruits and vegetables. I read a study the other day, specifically for the city of Trenton. We have 3 supermarkets where we should have 6, but we have a plethora of bodegas and corner stores. And so as you drill down on why don't we have access to this, we don't really communicate as much as we don't communicate enough to the Department of Agriculture. We don't have those close locations don't offer fresh fruits and vegetables because they don't have the capabilities of keeping them fresh. So when we talk about drilling down and looking at what can we do for the state of New Jersey, we have a whole lot of work to do. We have some organizations that have started some urban farming, but we can do more. We can do better. How do we get to every person to be able to say, oh, I can grow my own tomatoes. I can grow my own cucumbers. I can start off by small projects in our communities that may be doing herbs, but it takes a specific strategic and deliberate plan to do that. And so this is what I'm looking to try to do in terms of helping move the legislation forward and how we can bring funding to those type of centers. We've been urbanized so much. We don't even think sometimes, when you go in the morning for transportation, if you have transportation, how are you going to get to work, get to the grocery store, take care of my kids, take care of my family? These things are just not all optional for some people. So we want to make it easy and accessible for people to eat healthy, have access to health care. But we have a long way to go. We've made some progress, but this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Wow. Very innovative and actionable responses for us to be able to go within our contexts, not just within Trenton and Mercer County, but within all 21 of our counties to begin to look at these things. Before we move on to the next question, I want to ask Dr. Menefield or Dr. Bloxham if they wanted to add or clarify some other pieces as it relates to the state of health equity in New Jersey.
Well, being the researcher that I am, I had to look at the actual data. And the state of New Jersey is doing quite well in a lot of respects, and they're certainly lagging behind in some others, particularly as it relates to equity. What the data shows is that tobacco use is still higher than it should be for youth in New Jersey. COVID deaths are definitely higher among African Americans and the Hispanic population. Sexually transmitted diseases are still higher than what the state barometer has said. Obesity is high, particularly Assemblywoman Jackson just mentioned the lack of healthy choices with stores. This goes hand in hand with the lack of physical activity. You couple those two together, going back to the example of bodegas, that spells disasters, particularly for persons in minority communities. Low birth weight, infant mortality, those things are still particularly high. I don't want to point out all of the negative things. The state is doing some wonderful work in terms of getting health insurance for a variety of people, coverage for children, coverage for those under 65, finding primary care providers, reducing asthma-related deaths, hospitalization, emergency room visits. So there's certainly some things to be positive about, but we have a lot of work to do.
And I just briefly mentioned that, when we're talking about, and I love the way that the Assemblywoman phrased it about drilling down on the particular issues, right? So we have a large state, right? Millions of individuals. We have 21 counties, 565/566 municipalities. And it's important to remember that all these various areas are, working in connection with one another, but also different and have their own disparate access points. To add even more to the numbers, when we're drilling down, we're looking at that statewide level, then drilling down to the 21 counties, then drilling down to the 565 municipalities, and then actually drilling down to the 2020 census tracts throughout the state of New Jersey, right? And when you look at each, and yeah, I'm a nerd too, right? So when you're looking at each one of those areas, you're going to see disparities in relation to socioeconomic statuses, and especially race. But you'll also see how all these things actually work together. When you look at the social determinants of health, it's really tricky because each one of them play off of each other. So when I talk about them, I like to say that I picture these social determinants of health, the five main ones, as gears. If you can picture this in your mind, right? So one is going to be health access, and the next will be educational attainment. The next will be like your immediate environment, where you live, what's around you outside. Then your wages, your income. And we have to understand that these gears turn together, right? So when they have a positive turn, they're all turning in a positive way. But when they have a backwards turn or a negative turn, one of those social determinants will impact the other social determinant. And if we're not able to understand how all these things are mutually inclusive of each other, we can really start paying attention to one and not the other, and spend all of our attention working and focusing on one without realizing that all those other things are also, affected by one of the gears.
Thank you, Dr. Menefield and Dr. Bloxham. Dr. Bloxham, we're going to stay with you for the next question because you're talking about an interrelatedness with these five gears. Can you apply that interrelatedness into this question about how we view issues of health equity that apply to young people? Because we know you do a lot of work with young people. So how do we see that interrelatedness that you were referring to as it relates to health equity and young people?
I think for young people, it's even more tricky, right? Because it's not just that young person, it's their reference network. And by reference network, I mean the people that they hang out with, the people who they trust in their own age cohort, right? And then in addition to those young people and their reference network, it's going to be a level up, which is going to be all the individuals who are connected to those young people and their reference network. And then a level up from that, you want to talk about the policies and everything that's associated with all those different and varying points of what we call points of entry below that. So some specific examples, or a specific example, when you're looking at the way that these gears turn together. I don't know about you, but when I'm hungry, like you think about the Snickers commercial, like when I'm hungry, I'm a bit angry, right? I'm a bit irritable. I'm also not able to focus as much. Now, what is being attached to my inability to focus? Is it just me hanging out? Is it me interacting socially? Is it me doing my homework? Is it me interacting with my family members and that reference network? If I'm unable to do that, that's going to have some consequences. And depending on who's looking at my quote unquote inability to interact properly as in alignment with like the way the social structures would look at how my interaction should be, then there can be dire consequences for me, right? Because maybe I'm just hungry and that's why I can't focus and I don't have an intellectual or developmental disability. But if the correct questions aren't asked in regards to why I'm unable to perform in comparison to another group, that entire question may get missed. And then taking it up even levels higher than that, when there's individuals who are outside of the community, kind of, measuring the interactions of that community, and they're not in it and of that community, you can totally miss things, and then that's when other things start going awry. So it's really tricky. And then again, when we talk about the gears and all the different census tracts and all the different availability of resources, each one of those things is going to be different per community, and we have to pay really close attention to that. And Secretary Way, in her intro video, she mentioned empathy. So I think one of the answers and one of the solutions to some of those disparities is to actually ask young people what's going on, what's going wrong, and what do they need, right? Because they're truly the key to unlock the issues that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Bloxham. And I want to move into another question with Dr. Menefield, and then we are going to have the Assemblywoman answer this next question. But Dr. Menefield, what is our state doing to make childbirth and early childhood safer for mothers and children of underserved, and I would say historically underserved populations or demographics?
Thank you for that question. It's a really good question. I'm very happy to say that New Jersey has been very active in this space. Very specifically, the state has what's called the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, and they partnered with New Jersey, Nurture New Jersey, and the First Lady, Tammy Murphy, spearheaded this. Specifically, she worked with these organizations to issue a request for information seeking input to establish a Center for Maternal and Infant Health in Trenton. And this organization will be dedicated to innovation and research with an emphasis on addressing racial disparities and ensuring equity in care and outcomes for mothers and infants. And this was literally just last year. In addition, the state of New Jersey has also been active in the nursing space. The state offers nurse visits after birth in an effort to address maternal mortality crisis. Right now, the state is ranked 45th in the nation in maternal mortality. This is the data is relevant as 2018. Basically, for every 100,000 births, 38 of the babies died, according to the United Health Foundation. So I say all this to say that I'm very happy when I was doing the research to find that the state has not shirked their responsibility in this respect. So we can see some fruitages, hope to see some fruitages from these activities in the very near future.
Definitely. And we would hope that the state would take some of what Dr. Bloxham is referring to as it relates to interacting with those communities, since they're often outside of those communities, to be able to get stakeholders within those communities to be bridges for some of these wonderful things that the state is offering, so that capacity and support can be offered in a way that doesn't seem as if it's outside of the community or foreign to the community. We certainly want to make sure that the stakeholders within the community, I was always taught you never do for the people what the people can do for themselves. So we need to make sure that we're in a position to be able to do that. And that's a good segue for the Assemblywoman's question as it relates to health within children and sickle cell anemia within African Americans within the state of New Jersey. So we know that sickle cell is something that hits disparately the African American population here in the United States and abroad disproportionately. What are some of its causes, and what are some of the things that we can continue to do? We know the state is doing some things, but what is it that we can do within our own local context as Assemblywoman to battle sickle cell, to talk about testing of sickle cell earlier, treatment and supports for families with people that have sickle cell anemia? If you could give us some broad things that we can begin to do and make actionable like you did in the first question, that would be great.
Absolutely. I think, for number one, full disclosure, my nephew has sickle cell. He's had it since birth. I've seen this disorder from infancy through adulthood, and how it affects a person's life. There is the stigma behind it that it isn't, paralyzing, where he could be out for a day or two, or it could be weeks. And you transform that over into school. How does that impact you in school? How does it impact you as an adult with work? People don't realize how debilitating this is. And I think we have to continue to raise awareness about what sickle cell disease is. Some of the statistics that I have down from the U.S. Center for Disease Control is that approximately 80 to 90 infants in New Jersey are born each year with the sickle cell disorder. And I think we have to continue to raise awareness. I have an awesome example. I had a summer intern. Her friend had sickle cell, and she had to explain how, people didn't understand, and she wanted to do something to raise awareness. And so through her, we were able to raise awareness. We partnered with the high school. We partnered with some local organizations as well to be able to talk about it. We brought in the state of New Jersey, their Sickle Cell Foundation. But what we've also found out is we're again in a situation where we don't have access to healthcare for sickle cell in the city of Trenton. We have to go as far as New Brunswick. When you start to talk about transportation and cost and what that means to a family, you might not have the funds for some of these trials or some of these medicines that you need. So when we talk about looking at specifically how we can help families, having access right here, everybody doesn't have that. So I'm gonna just say this now as a prelude to what's happening. We're working on legislation so that we can bring funding and access here. We shouldn't have to travel so far. We love our partners throughout the state, but when we talk about, me going to the doctors in New Brunswick and me going to the doctors in Trenton, and I live in Trenton, the likelihood that I'm going to follow up my doctor goes up significantly if I can get to it quickly. And then I don't have to take off from work, right? Because you going to New Brunswick, it's going to take you 2 hours to get there, 2 hours to get back, including doctor time. You're not going to work that day. So you got to be able to, again, think about how this significantly, just as one family, there are thousands of families that go through this, but we don't talk about it enough. So continue to elevate, to raise awareness about that in our schools, at the table with our stakeholders, so that they can continue to see. And the data is going to show that even more, and the resources that need to come along with it. So those are some of my takeaways. Let's keep on elevating this as often as we can.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I see Dr. Bloxham shaking his head. Dr. Bloxham or Dr. Menefield, did you want to add anything to the descriptions that the Assemblywoman brought out? I think the one takeaway that I took away was really goes back to Dr. Bloxham's gears and how interrelated. So when you're talking about access, you're talking about work and sick time, which if you're an hourly wage worker, you may not have. You're talking about transportation, whether that's the River Line or New Jersey Transit. You're talking about even being able to access that. And maybe if you're not near that, if you don't have a vehicle. And you're talking about gas prices that are well over $3.25 a gallon as we move further up the state. So that interrelatedness is what really brought out for me about the awareness that I can use. But Dr. Bloxham and Dr. Menefield, what else did you hear in terms of the Assemblywoman's critique about how we can begin or continue to support folks that are dealing with sickle cell anemia in their families or within their close circles?
So as I was listening, and I typically don't talk about things that haven't come to fruition yet when speaking publicly, but it's not what the Assemblywoman is talking about right now is not rocket science, right? What we have to do is be more than unapologetic when talking about the reasons that the disparities exist within our communities in the first place, right? And in looking at what we're able to do is to really take a closer look at the underutilized funding that we have in areas like Department of Labor, when we're talking about apprenticeships that typically only go to certain communities and certain occupations. More to come on that, probably in a later question. But talking about CTE, when we're talking about what's available and what's not available in high schools, and even educators having the capacity to do some of that training at the high schools, and then questioning why it is that some individuals in some communities understand peer supports and understand direct support professionals. Not only do they understand it, but their family members are paid to assist their ill family members through those other things that they have to go through. So it's not really a matter of them having to take off of work, because their work is actually to provide and to support their sick individuals who are in those households. But we don't talk about those things. Or maybe we do talk about those things, but when we talk about them, we're in rooms that the general public doesn't hear about, right? So I think we have to be able to, again, connect those dots and to say, okay, what does apprenticeships look like for those young people that are going through these things and have friends who are going through these things, and then say, okay, what amount of funding, hint, there's legislation pending at the state level right now for pre-apprenticeships. What is a pre-apprenticeship? Why don't we hear about them in our communities while there's funding in other communities for these things, to be able to literally hire these young people to do the things that they're actually interested in doing in the first place, and then link them to other networks with more capacity to do this work. And it sounds really, really complex, and in some ways it is, but if other communities can figure it out, and if other communities can be funded to figure those things out and get the technical assistance from departments to figure those things out, then we can also do them in our communities, especially in our concentrated areas of poverty where we know it's needed the most.
Thank you, Dr. Bloxham. Dr. Menefield and Assemblywoman and Dr. Bloxham, we have a question from the chat that I think segues from the Assemblywoman and Dr. Bloxham's comments as it relates to the numbers ramping up with COVID. What initiatives is the state of New Jersey taking for employees taking off due to having COVID while having to use their personal time, which is limited to maybe 2 to 3 weeks of sick time when you work in a department and they keep shutting it down and the employees are losing money? And I would say that that's not just local employees or state employees, but those are corporate. And is there legislation within either of the houses or out of the governor's office that is beginning to address sick time? I know that that is an issue that in the public schools around the country that school districts are beginning to address as well. So let's start first because we left off with Dr. Menefield. Any thoughts about that question in the chat? And then we'll go to the Assemblywoman, and then we'll end with Dr. Bloxham.
Well, first, I'll say this. The state did create a COVID-19 pandemic task force to address a variety of issues, and this issue is certainly one of those issues. The research clearly shows that communities of color, vulnerable communities, don't have the safety nets that a lot of other entities are afforded. The research clearly shows that if Charles Menefield, black male, works at a job, he's less likely to be able to take off and work from home, less likely to, or more likely to have to use public transportation to get to work, etc. When you compile all those things together, it has a disparate impact on you. So the state is aware of what these things are. I cannot speak to the extent of what the task force is actually proposing addressing this particular item specifically. I can't speak to that part.
Thank you, Dr. Menefield. Assemblywoman?
You know, we are still building the plane in the air. There are different departments that have different protocols, different standards. We also are trying to deal with different unions. Unfortunately, I don't have a solid answer. I know I get a number of calls from constituents that have health complaints. They have doctors that are writing to ask if they can continue to work from home. And there are all types of channels that you have to go through in order to get approved. And they're different for each one. So I would continue to suggest that you contact your union and continue to work with your administration in order to figure out, you know, the CDC guidelines are also changing. So now you have new rules that are in place, but it does impact people at the end of the day. Do you come to work and infect everybody? Do I stay home? Do I have the time in order to do this? And so we're in this new space right now, and I apologize. I don't have a solid answer to say you should do steps 1 through 10.
I also have no answer to that question. I think it's a really complex question, and we know that, you know, departments sometimes are very siloed in the way that they do their work. So it's going to be different from department to department based upon, you know, those internal policies in addition to the state policies. And forget about talking about public employees at the municipal level, because those are also, you know, mandated and changed by each municipality. Sorry, but I also don't have an answer for that. It's really complex.
Thank you all. Go ahead, Dr. Menefield.
We had one of our questions, you know, kind of addressed this more broadly. And the question specifically asked how, you know, has COVID affected undeserved communities? And I didn't really learn anything new when I looked at the data, but I actually saw the actual numbers. And I'm just going to give you a couple of items. The Hispanic populations are much more likely to contract COVID than any other group in New Jersey, followed by African Americans. Black people are much more likely to have been hospitalized than any other group, followed by the Hispanic population. Black persons are much more likely to have died from COVID, followed closely by Hispanic. And we're talking about more than twice as likely as the white population in both hospitalizations and deaths. So those are, I would consider, you know, high-end COVID impacts. You know, not going to work one day, you can get over that. You can't get over a death disease. So I say all that to say, COVID has really highlighted some disparities that we've never seen before. One of the positive externalities I believe is going to come out of this is the whole social equity, health equity lens. Like, we have to look at these things holistically, because this pandemic is affecting African Americans and Hispanics particularly in ways drastically different than other populations in the state. So the employment question is perfectly in line with this, because it's one of many things that we have to think about.
And I think also some of the really important variables to look at around that is not just the unemployment number and those employees that are being affected. I think because we're starting to see these disparities a little bit more, or let me correct that, not that we're starting to see them more, but that people are publicly admitting what we already knew a bit more, is that we also now have to focus and concentrate on populations that individuals don't typically want to focus on. When we talk about unemployment numbers being high, you should also be focusing on the out of work individuals.
How about that?
Who are chronically unemployed. Because when you start adding those numbers into the unemployment numbers, you see a completely different number for communities. And then we can actually get a more clear picture on who's actually being impacted and who's being affected at the community level. Not just what we want to talk about, not just what's familiar and what's comfortable, but it's also about the structural things that have, impacts and will have an impact for like centuries to come. And that sounds like hyperbole, but I shouldn't be able to look back at an 1850s report from Du Bois and talk about the same exact things from the Reconstructive period that I'm able to talk about right now in the most diverse state in the nation. I shouldn't be able to do it.
Well said. Well said. So as we come to the last 8 minutes of our roundtable, and we want to thank all of you all for giving us questions. We'll make sure that we interject and try to get all of your questions answered. What can all of us do to help underserved populations find a medical home? And if you could define for us what is meant by a medical home, that would be helpful. But then what can those underserved demographics do? How can we continue to advocate to help folks find a medical home? So why don't we start with Dr. Menefield, then we'll go to Dr. Bloxham, and then we'll end with Assemblywoman Jackson.
You would be amazed how many people actually go to the emergency room for primary care. So a medical home refers to when a person has a primary health care physician that they can go to for what I call day-to-day activities. It's way higher than it is, and even for persons that have Medicaid, Medicare, a lot of them still go to the emergency room for essentially non-emergency activities. So I think what I think we can do is we can encourage policymakers to make. Actually, I think the commission we can band together as commissioners and as well as the person that are on here with us to essentially make universal health care available to everybody in New Jersey. I'm a strong believer in universal health care, and I think if we had it, we wouldn't be asking questions such as this, like, why do you need to find a primary care physician? If we had universal health care, everyone will have equal access to health care, and it wouldn't be a problem.
I think that we take a kind of different approach when we talk about health and look at healthcare to start talking about wellness a little bit more, right? Because it's not just the physical health, it's also the mental health. And as a therapist, I looked at holistic practices, right? So I didn't just look at the presenting problem. So I didn't just look at an individual coming in with a mental health disorder or a substance use disorder. I looked at that individual as a complete whole individual to say, okay, maybe that mental health disorder, maybe that substance use disorder is actually manifested in a result of those other things that go wrong, right? So when we look at, or we can start to imagine looking at wellness and looking at the 8 dimensions of wellness, which includes physical health, mental health, intellectual, again, back to the social, environmental health, and I won't keep going on and on about it because I know we're coming down on time. I think that we have to, instead of zooming in on those issues like we do when we look at the individual disparities, that we zoom out a little bit to say, okay, what is creating these issues at the larger level? Because it's going to be more of a neutral approach that is not necessarily going to be able to be done or corrected and fixed at that individual level, right? So like the dean said, we have to be able to zoom out of what we're looking at when we look at those things, to look higher up to state and feds and maybe even international to get some things done around those things.
And I think we have to continue to talk about health wellness as a staple, as we talk about healthy, talk about health in general, when we talk about housing, when we talk about education. I believe this is all a part of the conversation. My primary is actually retiring. So what am I doing now? I'm talking to my different friends. I'm talking to my high school nurse. I'm like, listen, I need a new doctor. Who is that going to be? And so I'm thinking about, how do I communicate my needs to the community to say, who's your doctor and how do you follow up? And I believe we'll be able to make it more of a normal conversation than an emergency. I'm not feeling well. I haven't been feeling well for quite some time. Then to come to find out I got diabetes or I had a stroke or, I'm suffering from other conditions. I look at wellness as something that is continual. I do checkups all the time. I try to make that a part of my routine, but everybody doesn't do that. So we have to make it so that it's easy. You have information and you're feeling empowered and motivated as though this is just a part of our life cycle and things that we're supposed to be doing. So I say we share information and we try to get it out there as often as possible, creating those easy access points so that people don't have to jump through hoops and there isn't a ton of barriers around them stopping them from doing that. The emergency room is just that. But I also think from a policy perspective, I know we did something here in Trenton where we created a database so that no matter what emergency room you went to, your information would be there. Because that was the other thing. You don't want to treat me here, I'm going to go somewhere else. So if you have this electronic medical chart, but it's not accessible for everybody. So I think that's the loophole that we're trying to close up now. How do we make sure we can track them and keep them on a good cycle when we do see them?
Thank you all, and thank you for that last word, Assemblywoman. This has been an incredible conversation as it relates to health disparities in the 21st century here in all 21 of our counties. We'd like to thank Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds Jackson for the work that she is doing, Dr. Charles Menefield and Dr. Quincy Bloxam for the incredible work that they both are doing. All of them are our New Jersey Martin Luther King commissioners. You can go to our website if you'd like to interact with them or us, or you have more questions that we can certainly try to follow up with you on the complexities of some of the topics that we talked about, because things are continuing to change and goodness knows what will happen if there will be another variant after the Omicron, and there will be constant changes. But these are three individuals who are helping the state and counties and local municipalities, higher education, service providers, and communities and the youth pivot with all of the things that we are doing. And God only knows we have had to pivot a great deal in the last 18 or so months. And we probably will have to continue to do that. But we thank you, panel, for the wonderful words of wisdom, of encouragement, and getting us moving forward as it relates to health disparities. And then I will leave with Dr. Bloxam as it relates to our understanding of wellness as a whole, so that we can move forward within those spaces. We have about 30 seconds. Do we have any closing words? We will have the Assemblywoman go first, and then Dr. Bloxam, and then Dr. Menefield.
Thank you so much. I would just say that the urgency is now. Everybody can serve in any type of capacity. So let's continue to educate, raise our voices, and engage and speak up and speak often and loud. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you all today. And thank you, Mom.
I'm going to go and I'm going to comment on a question that I see in regards to the 50 communities in the food desert program. We also have to realize is so when we have really innovative programs like NJEDA and the other programs that are at the state level, we also have to have more technical assistance for those underlying communities that need additional assistance. The work that I'm able to do in Newark, because of the extra or additional support that they get, is totally different from what I'm able to do in cities like Salem or Paulsboro. And we need to really pay attention to those elected officials and those community leaders needing additional support to even qualify, to even apply for the applications that come out of these really innovative programs, because sometimes the lack of knowledge and lack of ability is one of the things that stops all of these municipalities from actually being able to get the support that is available. So it's not just about the availability of resources, it's also about the access to those resources, and then the ease in which individuals can adopt that access to do what they need to do in their municipalities. And if we don't look at those things, then we won't close the gaps, period.
Thank you, everyone. I want to close by encouraging our young people to seriously consider careers in the medical field, the healthcare field. The healthcare field has always been very, very ripe for new employees. There's a huge need for medical assistants, nursing assistants, nurses, doctors, therapists, social workers, pharmacists, and the list goes on and on. So if you have any aspirations to be in the healthcare profession, I would strongly encourage you to consider it and not let, the STEM professions elude you. If you're interested, you should go for it.
Thank you all for your work in this area, continued advocacy, and for moving us forward with a call within the fierce urgency of now. We are going to shift this part of the commemorative back to a musical tribute by Irene Olson. And then we are going to honor one of our own, Commissioner Mildred Crump. And that honoration will take place with Commissioner Diane Hill and Commissioner Geraldine Clark. And then we have some words from a recent graduate of Arts High School in Newark, Xavier Jordan, who's going to be bringing us some words. And then our own Commissioner Brenda Lee will be unveiling something that is very exciting. I'm going to let her talk with you about that. And then finally, we're going to have a call to action as we close you out, because remember, Dr. King said that anyone can serve. So we don't want to leave this commemorative without the fierce urgency of now being put into action with things that you can do throughout our 21 counties within the state, and many of which are virtual, but all of which have health and safety guidelines attached to them so that you can serve tomorrow, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, and you can continue to make your service in the health profession or wherever you may find your service valuable and representative of Dr. King. So without further ado, let's hear from the wonderful Irene Olson, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can help somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody that he's traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. No, my living shall not be in vain. My living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a good man ought, if I can bring back beauty to a world abroad, if I can spread love's message as the man
with thank you for all that you're doing. And I have been asked to introduce a very good friend of mine, um, Councilwoman Mildred Crump. She and I have been friends for probably like 40 years or more. She's an awesome person. I'm so sorry that we couldn't do this in person, that we could give her this award. She has been a vital part of the Martin Luther King Commission, but she's also been a vital part of Newark, the state of New Jersey, women's issues. The list goes on and on and on of all the accomplishments that she has had in her life, being the first African American woman to serve in the council at large in Newark, being the first African American woman to serve as the Newark Council president. So as I said, her accomplishments are great, and we just thank, and I'm just so grateful to know her as my friend, my mentor. Like I said, the list goes on and on. There's so many things I can say about her, but I just want to present to some and introduce to others Councilwoman Mildred Crump. Unfortunately, she is not going to be on with us today, but her son, Councilman Larry Crump, who will be accepting the award on her behalf. And also Commissioner Diane Hill is there to present it to them. So thank you again. And we're glad that you were part of this afternoon Martin Luther King program. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am happy and delighted and very excited to present this award. First, I want to thank you, Commissioner Clark, for your wonderful words and your inspiring words. We all know how we all need to celebrate each other, but celebrating the work of the Honorable Mildred Crump is outstanding as a person a native of Newark, New Jersey, who was born and raised in Newark, and know the work that she's not only done there, but in the great state of New Jersey. You heard about her outstanding bio, and you heard in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, Commissioner Guy, state over that Mildred believes that everyone can be great because everybody can serve, just as Martin Luther King. This is her wonderful award that she will be getting, and it reads, to the Honorable Mildred C Krump for her dedicated service to the New Jersey Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Commission, January 16, 2022. It will be accepted by none other than her son, the Honorable Councilman Larry Crump.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Secretary Way and commissioners and all those who are on today. It is an honor and a privilege to accept this on behalf of my mother, Mildred Crump. As many of you know, she was on the commission before, and she loved being on that commission with Secretary Regina Thomas, as the Secretary of State at that time, with Governor McGreevey, along with so many other people, including, I cannot not mention Judith Fennelis, who was on staff at the time and is still a very important person in her life, my mother's life. I want to particularly also thank Irene Daniels, Geraldine Clark, and Commissioner Geraldine Clark and Commissioner Hill for this honor. If she could have been on, she would have. But she was, when I told her about this honor, she was, as she would say, if you would know her, tickled pink, and very excited and happy to receive this. I look forward to when Ms. Hill can present it to her in person, hopefully in the next couple of days. And I know she will be very happy to receive it and really wants to thank everyone who is part of this ceremony. By the way, this is a wonderful ceremony. I've been actually watching it and enjoying everyone, particularly the panel discussion that just occurred too. So everybody have a blessed day, wonderful for this occasion as we celebrate my fraternity brother, I shall say, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on today. And as we celebrate him, just not only just today, but his teachings throughout the years. Thank you very much. And again, I thank you in accepting this honor on behalf of my mother, Mildred Crump.
Good evening. My name is Xavier Jordan. I am a senior at Arts High School, and today I will be performing an original piece entitled Forms. I feel stuck. I feel stuck genuinely, like nobody can help me in my circumstance. See, it's a circle, and the other end always comes back to you no matter what you do. Keep a few in your circle, because many try to escape. Maybe you should let them escape. They feel stuck helping you. It's really a time period where one can feel like a burden because they're helping you, seeking that you return the favor because in that very moment, they were your savior. To make a circle, you must get to where you started from. Now I understand why so many are closed with heavy outlines that never end. I'm just looking for an opening. Let me in, let me in. I want to know what's happening to the minds that confine to these forms. Social norms. I'm white, I'm straight, I'm gay, I'm black. Why should society care anyway? To raise a child, society does first. Bring me down at my worst, conflicted on who you are, labels that define who you are. You use others' experiences, yet you never experienced this. Now this is the label that you claim you is. Remember? Labels, a manifestation, a distinguish between living and non-living. Maybe you can't think outside the box because you was never inside the box. Maybe you was 2D, see, never could understand the reality of your dreams or your self-worth. So you fall flat and hold back to what's important to you because something's telling you what to do, what to believe, or that you can't achieve. They'll never understand the pain until you bleed. Never happy until there's a bullet in your head and you're lying there dead. Remember? Forms? I'm sure you do. It's used to seclude all of you. Forms, labels. It's the norms of oppression. It's to hide all confessions, conflicted by social peer pressure. So to these ideas, one conforms to these norms. But I'm here to inform that it is I that encourages you to break the norm, that's sworn to challenge that life is a free platform in which you perform self-expression. That is the ultimate progression to one's identity. That leads, that breaks social construct with authenticity, and which leads to forms of freedom and liberty. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. As Chairman Guy earlier said, my name is Brenda Lee, and I am a commissioner on the MLK Commemorative Commission. I am super, super excited about being here, and thank you, Commissioner Guy, for not stealing my thunder. Before we get into the exciting moment, I'll be remiss not to acknowledge former MLK Jr. Commemorative Commission co-chair and our forever council president for the great city of Newark, Mama Mildred C Krump. Council President, thank you for your service. Thank you for your leadership. I admire your heart for the people, and we indeed love you. And also shout out to Xavier Jordan from Arts High School. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So why are we here? What's the excitement about? Well, because of the great leadership, not only this commission, but in the state, and strong advocates that are commissioners on this commission and also support this commission and the work that's been happening. We have been able to receive an increase in our budget Chairman Guy alluded to this earlier. We are super duper excited. And because of that, because of the advocacy, because we recognize that education is indeed the great equalizer, the 2022 MLK Scholarship Essay Competition for high school seniors, we're able to award 10 high school seniors $5,000 each. It is a competition, so you must act. There's some action required here, but we just want to give it up for the commission, for the leader in this great state of New Jersey. We just want to thank, obviously, our Secretary of State, Tahisha Way. Thank you so much. Thank you for the increase in budget. We will continue to do the work. So the window, when does the window actually open? It opens today. Absolutely, it opens today at 5 p.m. And I just want to share some details about what's going to occur. So we have 3 essay questions. Okay, I'll stay with the slide. Okay, so we have 3 essay questions. And after we've gone through the process, whichever school the seniors will be attending in the fall, the money and the award will be sent directly to their university or college or vocational school. And the commission will select an independent reviewers of the process. So it'll be a fair process. We believe in fairness, but we're just so excited and we're just hoping that we get a lot of participation. Let's talk more. So again, as already stated, it opens today at 5 p.m. Applications are available. You can visit our website, and it closes March 22nd, March 18th, 2022 at 5 p.m. So there we are. That's our website. Let's get some details about the actual essay questions. Okay, the essay questions. How does the life of Dr. Martin Luther King inspire you as you think about your future? Tell us about your service to others during your high school years. And what are the greatest challenges facing your community? And how can Dr. King's strategies be used to address those challenges? As after the screening process, applicants will be required to submit 2 letters of references, 2 letters, whether it be from your teacher, your advisor, clergy, community-based leaders from some kind of community-based organization, and also your official 11th grade high school transcript. Again, we're so super, super duper excited. There's some pieces on here. You can see it on the screen in terms of the length of the essays. However, you can get all the details at our website. And I want to end with this quote from Dr. King. The function of education is to teach one to think intensively, and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. So that's our goal here, for you to think intensively as you complete these essays, and also to think critically. Be mindful, we have 10 $5,000 scholarship awards. We thank you so much. Good night and God bless.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lee. What an incredible way to bring us almost to the end of our commemorative. But I would be remiss if we didn't thank Irene Olson for her 2 musical tributes. Absolutely awe-inspiring. We can't have a commemorative without music related to Dr. King and civil rights and things that move us to push forward within the fierce urgency of now. I want to thank Commissioners Diane Hill and Commissioner Geraldine Clark. I want to thank Larry Krump for accepting the award for our former commissioner and councilwoman, Mildred Crump. We just absolutely love her. She helped us understand how to stand on shoulders. Remember that Dr. Jackson talked with us about standing on shoulders, and Dr. Krump, or Mildred Krump, has an incredible story. If you've never heard it, it is wonderful in terms of her life and her work with the commission and her work as an advocate here in the state of New Jersey and in the city of Newark. We also want to thank Commissioner Brenda Lee for giving us all of this incredible information. She was just as excited, and I am just as excited. I will echo some of the things that she talked about. Listen, we have $5,000 scholarships. I messed that up. Sorry about that. And the information is within Hopin. We've put the Department of State's website where you can download the applications. The applications will be open in T-minus 15 minutes at the Department of State. Any 12th grader within our 21 counties here in the state, public, private, homeschool, wherever you may find yourself within the 12th grade, we want you to apply. There were some specific things that Commissioner Lee talked about in terms of the criteria for application. That application is going to be open today, the 16th, and will close on March the 18th on 2022. Once again, that's at the Department of State. And then if you are one of those fortunate winners of that $5,000 scholarship, we will send that to your college or university or vocational school by June the 24th. The rationale for that is the state gets an apportionment of money, and we are coming down to the fiscal year. So we will hand it out to you at the end of our fiscal year. We'll make sure that goes in for your tuition or wherever else it may be needed. And we are excited to be able to offer that because we know that that is a reflection of what Dr. King would have wanted, to be able to help young people in a fiduciary way to help with their post-secondary education. And who needs it more in this climate, in this economic climate? $5,000 is not a great deal of money, but it certainly can support tuition needs at our colleges and universities and technical schools here in the state of New Jersey. So we're absolutely excited. I am going to end with our call to action. A call to action is, hey, what are we going to do with all this information? What are we going to do when Dr. Jackson talked with us about our understanding progress and pain and standing on the shoulders and making sure that our story and other stories are told? What are we going to do with all the information that Assemblywoman Reynolds Jackson, Dr. Menefield, and Dr. Bloxams gave us about health disparities and wellness? What are we going to do to reflect the work of the Mildred Krumps that exists here in the state as we recognize them and other elders for the advocacy that they are going to do? And what are we going to do in our local contexts with these scholarships? How are we going to take that scholarship information from the website on the Department of State, which opens in T-minus 12 minutes, download those applications and get them to our 12th graders in all 21 of our counties, especially those 12th graders who you know could really benefit and value from this money as they pursue post-secondary education at any of our colleges and universities, 2-year, 4-year, or our technical schools. And then finally, what call to action are we going to do? I said it, Commissioner Lee said it. Anybody can be great because anybody can serve. And tomorrow is the National Day of Service. It's not a day off, it's a day on. So within our description in Hopin, you will see our June 17th events that are happening all across the state of New Jersey. That information will also be at the Department of State website, but it's here at Hopin. So please look at that. Some of our event sponsors have decided, because of health and safety concerns, that they are going to host virtual events, but all of our event sponsors have health and safety protocols. So if you show up in person, make sure that you have a mask, follow social distancing, support all the health and safety protocols within the space in which you're going to volunteer, and let that volunteerism tomorrow propel you to more volunteerism and more advocacy on Tuesday the 18th, Wednesday the 19th, Thursday the 20th, and Friday the 21st, and so on, because that is a true reflection of Dr. King and his work. And that's what we want to do with the New Jersey Martin Luther King Commission. We want to reflect his values, especially to our young people who may not understand all the things that Dr. King was about. We certainly want to be able to present a fierce urgency of now and putting those things and reflecting those things in thought, word, and in deed. So that is our call to action. I want to once again thank all of the people that are working behind the scenes: Rowena Madden, Vincent Fidelis, Lisa Flythe. I want to thank Tanae Nicole and Nakia McLean and Angelique Lennon. I want to thank all of our commissioners that were able to join us to be able to present, commissioners that are working behind the scenes, commissioners that are working in all 21 of our counties and reflecting the work that we're doing. And we want to thank all of you for the great work that you are doing and taking some time out of your Sunday afternoon to engage with us, to network with us, to share information with us. And for those of you who are out of state, hey, even though many of these things are germane to the 21 counties in the state of New Jersey, talk to us, reach out to us. If you are looking to start a commission or expand the work within your state or your local context, reach out to us. We can be a support with you, and we want to be cheerleaders for you in the work that you are doing, because we do know that we have out-of-state participants. So we are very, very excited about all of the things that have been presented and moved forward. If you have any questions, you'll see our Department of State information within our Hopin platform, or you can go to the Department of State and you will see these things. This recording of this virtual commemorative at some point in the near future will be up on the Department of State, and you can share that with others. We want to thank you so very much for coming out. We hope that you continue to stay safe, be well, and remember, I can't emphasize enough that you are great because you can serve. So go out there, serve, reflect Dr. King in word, thought, and deed, and we will see you at some point, whether it's in a virtual space or in person. And thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.